Equal's eyes stood on the worn wooden deck of my family's old cabin, the creaking boards beneath my feet a familiar sound that echoed with the weight of long-buried memories. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, the sun casting warm rays through the branches of towering trees that surrounded Greenwood Valley like ancient guardians. It was a beautiful place, quiet and still, yet today my heart thudded loudly in my chest, betraying the calm that enveloped me. I could hear the distant rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze and the chirping of birds that danced around the treetops. Yet there was an unsettling tension in the air, like a storm brewing just out of sight. This was my sanctuary, a refuge I had fought to keep, even though it conjured memories I wished I could erase. I had promised myself that I would never return, but life has a way of dragging us back to the places we once fled. The cabin felt like a museum of my past, each corner filled with the laughter and tears of a childhood that had been abruptly cut short. I glanced at the dilapidated swing set in the yard, rusted but still intact, a ghost of the joyful summers I had spent with my sister, Myra. "Hey, Clara." I turned at the sound of my name, my best friend Jake, coming up the path, his tall frame silhouetted against the afternoon sun. He wore a concerned expression, those deep-set brown eyes of his scanning my face as if searching for something hidden beneath. "You okay? You've been really quiet since we got here." I forced a smile. "Yeah, just getting used to being back, I guess. It's been a while." Jake walked over and leaned against the railing, his hands tucked casually into his pockets. "Yeah, I can imagine. You didn't have to come back if you didn't want to." "I know, I hesitated, searching for the right words. "There are some things I need to face. You are brave for even stepping foot back here, Clara," he said, his tone gentle yet firm, reminding me once more of why I valued his friendship so much. "Remember what we talked about, facing your fears. You can't let them control you." "I know," I said, staring out into the lush green expanse, feeling the heat rise in my chest at the thought of what awaited me. But leaving was so much easier than coming back. There's just so much history here. "History can be erased, you know," he said, turning to me now, "if you want it to be. But what if it can't? What if it's too late?" My voice cracked, betraying the whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. Jake stepped closer, his expression softening. "You are not alone in this. I'm right here. Whatever happens, we will figure it out together." I inhaled deeply, drawing in the scent of pine mixed with the faint hint of the lake nearby. "Thanks, Jake. That really means a lot." I pulled my gaze from the shadows of the past and focused on him. He was always the steady one, the rock I could lean on when the world felt overwhelming. I didn't know how I would get through this without him. "Let's go inside," he suggested, nodding toward the cabin. "Want me to make us something to eat? I feel like we haven't had a real meal since we got here." "That would be great." As we stepped inside, the familiar smell of old wood and dust wrapped around me like an old, forgotten quilt, stirring up fragments of my childhood. The living room was dim, the sunlight barely pouring in through the dense foliage outside. I stepped further inside, my fingers brushing against the faded wallpaper, remembering how my sister and I would spend hours decorating it with crayon drawings. "Where is it?" I whispered aloud to myself, my heart racing as I walked through the house. I could hear Jake rummaging around in the kitchen. "What are you looking for?" he called, his voice echoing in the stillness. "Old memories," I answered, forcing a light chuckle. "What else?" I finally found it, the old box tucked away beneath a stack of memories untouched and long neglected. It was an unassuming cardboard box, frayed at the edges but still sturdy, the faded label barely holding onto its promise of forgotten dreams. My breath caught in my throat as I lifted the box carefully, the weight of it heavy as if it carried the burdens of my past. I made my way back into the living room, where Jake had set up a small picnic on the worn-out rug. "It's not gourmet, but I think I managed to whip up some pasta and garlic bread," he announced proudly, showcasing the mismatched plates and colorful napkins he had found. "Looks great." I smiled, trying to shake off the deeper thoughts swirling through my mind, knowing I had to keep it together, at least for now. Let's eat first, and then I will dig into this," I said, placing the box on the coffee table just out of reach for now. "Sure thing, just know that I am totally invested in whatever you have in there." He grinned, and I chuckled softly. We settled onto the floor, and I focused on the food in front of me, allowing Jake's presence to ease the tightness in my chest. With each bite, I tried to ignore the box looming nearby, but I could feel its pull, like a siren song stirring memories just beneath the surface. "So," Jake said between bites, "you feel up to talking about, well, everything?" I paused, chewing slowly as I thought about my response. I always thought coming back here would be, I don't know, different, like I'd feel brave or something. And I do feel brave, but it's mixed with a lot of guilt and anger. I thought coming back would help me sort things out, but it only reminds me of everything that happened. "The past can haunt you if you let it," he said, his expression serious. I knew he was right. My mind was already swimming with memories, the kind that make your skin crawl with regret. Sometimes facing it is the only way to truly move forward, or to get tangled up in it even more, I muttered quietly, a wave of frustration crashing over me. "Did you ever think about what happened?" "It still feels like she's out there, waiting for me." "You never really got closure," Jake said gently. "The silence left behind, it's deafening, but what you need to remember is that you are strong enough to find a resolution, Clara." I looked down at my untouched food, suddenly losing my appetite. I found out some things recently about our childhood, about why everything went the way it did, and it makes me so angry. Things you didn't know before." He asked, his voice steady and encouraging. "Exactly. There are pieces to this puzzle that have been missing my whole life, and I'm tired of feeling like a victim. I want to confront those responsible for what happened." "And you think coming back here will help you do that?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," I answered, my voice suddenly stronger as I sat up straighter. "They need to know I am not afraid anymore. I want them to understand what they did to my family, what it did to Myra." Jake nodded, the seriousness of my words settling between us, the air thick with unspoken understanding. "You deserve to be heard, Clara, but just be careful. You could be opening old wounds." "I know." I glanced at the box once more, the urge to open it growing stronger. "I need to figure all this out. I never wanted to be a victim, and for too long I felt like I was stuck in their story, a silent character waiting for someone to save me." "You will write your own story," he said firmly. "Starting right now, and I will make sure they regret the day they crossed paths with me," I murmured, my own determination filling the space between us. For the first time, it felt less like a burden and more like a promise I owed myself. As we finished our meal, I glanced again at the box, the memories inside begging me to look closer, to finally confront the silence I had carried for so long. "All right," I finally said, the conviction spilling from me. "Let's see what's inside." Jake leaned forward, curiosity dancing in his eyes as I slowly opened the box, revealing a collection of faded photographs, a mix of crumpled letters and forgotten trinkets that had once been precious to me. Each piece I unearthed felt like a thread pulling me back to the past, tangible remnants of lives intertwined and ultimately shattered. "Whoa," Jake said, his voice filled with awe. "Did you really keep all of this?" I nodded, my heart racing as I picked up a photo of Myra from a summer day long ago, her laughter caught mid-sentence, her hair wild in the breeze. "She was always so vibrant," I whispered, tracing the outline of her face in the photograph. "So full of life." Jake leaned closer, and I could feel the warmth of his presence, lending me strength as I faced my past head-on. "What happened to her, Clara?" he asked softly. "Why did you and your family disappear?" The weight of the question hung heavy in the air, and I felt the stirring of anger rise within me. I wanted to scream her name until the world heard me, Myra, but instead I gathered my thoughts and reached deeper into the box, unearthing a letter addressed to my mother, the handwriting as familiar as my own. As I unfolded the letter, the smell of old paper wafted into the air, transporting me back to moments I had long since buried. Desperately, I searched for clues, for truths that had long been obscured by silence and shame. "Clara," Jake's voice broke into my thoughts, filled with caution. "You don't need to go through this if it hurts too much." "Sometimes hurt is the only way to heal," I replied, biting back the swell of emotion. "I need to confront this." With every word I read, every piece uncovered, I began to feel a surge of power rising inside me. I could no longer remain silent. The weight of the past was heavy, but I had learned to bear it. And now I was ready to forge a new path, one that would lead to truth, justice, and ultimately, revenge. The first light of dawn crept through the cracks of my bedroom window, scattering across the floor like shards of broken promises. I lay there, tangled in my sheets, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of resentment settle into the pit of my stomach. The events from yesterday twisted and turned in my mind, an unrelenting loop of humiliation stuck on replay. My heart thundered in my chest, not just from anger, but from the cold realization that I had been wronged yet again. After the encounter with Mike and Lily at Brandy's coffee shop, I thought it might bring me some clarity. Instead, it had spiraled me deeper into a pit of isolation where their laughter echoed like a haunting melody. I could practically see their smug faces replaying that moment, their patronizing comments wrapping around me like barbed wire. "Oh, Clara, you remember when you thought you could be one of us?" Lily's voice taunted me in my mind, her bright hair catching the sunlight like a crown of gold, the very thing that made me feel like dirt beneath their feet. I shook my head violently, dispelling the memory like mist. "No more," I whispered to myself, clutching the pillow tighter as if it could absorb my doubts. The sun illuminated the edges of my thoughts, but did little to chase away the shadows slinking around in my heart. I needed a plan, a way to take control and reclaim my narrative. Slumping out of bed, I shuffled to the kitchen, my bare feet cold against the wooden floor. The air was crisp with the scent of coffee from the pot I had set up the night before. The gurgle of the brewing coffee was oddly comforting. Pouring myself a cup, I cradled it in my hands, watching the deep brown liquid swirl, mirroring the chaotic thoughts swirling in my mind. "Focus, Clara," I murmured to myself, taking a deep breath, inhaling deeply as the bitter aroma filled my senses. "You will not be the victim anymore." I leaned against the counter, once again recalling the looks on their faces. I craved an opportunity, not just for revenge, but to see them squirm, to feel the power shift as the tables turned. My laptop was on the dining table, its screen still dark and waiting. Thoughts raced as I pictured every possible scenario. How could I make them pay for the years of ridicule? I took a sip of the hot liquid, the warmth spreading through me, igniting a tiny spark of determination. I needed dirt on them, something to use against them, because rumor had it that Mike had recently got himself into a situation at work, something that could jeopardize his position. Why not dig a little deeper? I thought, a sly smile creeping onto my face as I envisioned the possibilities. With that, I picked up my phone and tapped into my contacts until I found Jake's number. He used to be Mike's best friend, but they had a falling out after Mike got promoted and Jake didn't. I had heard how bitter he was about it. Maybe he knew something useful. As the phone rang, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I hadn't talked to Jake in ages. Would he even want to help me? Hello. His voice was raspy and tired, but solid. Jake, it's Clara. There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear the gears of his mind turning. Clara, wow, this is unexpected. I sensed the hesitation in his tone. Yeah, I know we haven't talked in a while. I wanted to reach out because, well, I thought you might have insight regarding Mike. I hear things aren't going so great for him at work. Is that true? After a pause, I heard a deep sigh. Why are you interested? Mike hasn't exactly been kind to anyone since he got that promotion. I'm just curious. He and Lily treated me pretty poorly. I'm just trying to find a way to, I don't know, flip the script. Are you serious? You want to get back at them? His tone shifted from cautious to intrigued, hovering between disbelief and excitement. Is that such a bad thing? I ventured, trying to sound confident. Depends on how you go about it. You know, they've made a lot of enemies, especially Mike. That jerk has his hand in a lot of shady situations. Like what? Every word from him sunk deeper into my mind, feeding the fire of my revenge. I could tell you, but you have to promise me you won't go straight to Mike and squeal. I don't want to end up with a target on my back, too. Jake, I promise, I want them to feel what I've felt. The resolve in my voice surprised even me. Fine, fine. So I heard that Mike was messing around with some accounts at work. It's all hush-hush. I don't know the details, but if anyone found out, it could be bad for him. I bit my lip, my heart racing with the implications. How reliable is this info? Pretty solid. My buddy at the office mentioned it. That's why Mike has been acting all high and mighty lately. He thinks he can get away with anything. Interesting. Just be careful, Clara. Revenge is a slippery slope. Trust me, Jake, I'm well aware. All right then, let me know how this plays out, okay? I want to hear about it. Absolutely, I hung up and stared into space, reflecting on what Jake had just said. I felt both exhilarated and nervous. I was sitting on a potential goldmine of closely guarded secrets. After brewing a couple more cups of coffee to keep myself energized, my head buzzed with ideas. I turned to my laptop, fingers hovering over the keys, ready to type out a plan, a blueprint for the chaos I wanted to unleash on Mike and Lily. The dance between anger and excitement kept the adrenaline pumping. I began to sketch out the structure of my revenge. I would start small, nothing too brazen to blow back on me at first. A few subtle whispers here and there, feeding into a larger narrative. To take their power, I would have to sow the seeds of distrust within their circle, poke a few holes in their shiny facade until it all came crashing down like a house of cards. First, the coworker, I said to myself as I pulled up my social media accounts to scout for mutual friends. The thrill rushed through me like ice-cold water on a hot day. I would reach out to anyone who might be able to confirm or deny Mike's wrongdoings at work. It was all about timing. I learned from my mistakes. I wouldn't strike too soon. I sent a message to one of Mike's colleagues, someone I had casually met once at a company event. Hey Sarah, long time no talk. Just curious, have you heard anything about Mike's project lately? I've been hearing whispers. As I waited for a reply, I dug deeper into my thoughts, imagining the satisfaction of watching their worlds crumble. My mind drifted back to the moments they made me feel small, the way they snickered at my fashion choices, how they whispered behind my back in the break room, the way they looked me up and down like I was a ghost. One day soon, I would rise from the ashes and they would learn exactly how wrong they were about me. The sound of my phone pinged pulled me back to reality. Sarah had replied, Hey Clara, yeah, things have been a bit chaotic at the office. Mike seems stressed. There have been rumors. I wouldn't take what he says at face value. Just a heads up. So glad to hear from you. Thanks, Sarah. I mean, I never knew Mike could stress, you know. He always acts so cool. Almost instantly, Sarah responded, exactly. By the way, if you want to catch up soon, let me know. Sounds great. Let's get coffee this week. Sure, let's chat. Always room for some gossip. I rolled my eyes at her eagerness but felt a flicker of joy at the lightness of my words. Every step I took felt like progress. The wires connecting me to my past, my humiliation, faded ever so slightly with each message. I could feel the shift within me. Revenge was no longer just an idea, it was a mission. As I leaned back in my chair, I could practically hear the gears turning. I pictured Mike's face as the walls of his carefully constructed office life crumbled around him, the panic in his eyes as the truth emerged. For Lily, it would be just as delicious. Go ahead, act superior, I thought bitterly, a smile creeping onto my lips. Just wait until you find out that I have the last laugh. Sipping my coffee, I felt empowered, the dawn of a new day all around me, suggesting that the isolation I'd once felt was beginning to dissipate. The sun poured through my window, spilling warmth onto my skin as if signaling that it was my time to shine. Plan in motion, I murmured, the taste of victory lingering just beyond the horizon, so close I could almost touch it. Little did I know, the journey to reclaim my life and my power was just beginning. Clara Thompson stood at the edge of Greenwood Valley, the sunlight pouring through the branches, casting playful patterns on the cold ground beneath her feet. It was one of those crisp autumn days where the air held a sharp bite, but the colors of the leaves blazed with a fiery brilliance that made the valley look like a painting. Yet Clara felt none of the beauty. Instead, her heart beat with a relentless anger, a drum echoing the frayed edges of her resolve. Each breath she took was heavy, filled with the weight of her plan, the taste of revenge lingering on her tongue like bitter ash. "Clara," a voice called from behind her, pulling her from the depths of her thoughts. It was Lucy, her childhood friend, with a buoyant bounce in her step that Clara envied. "What are you doing out here all alone?" "Do you want to go for a walk?" Clara forced a smile, turning to face Lucy, her long blonde hair blowing lightly with the cool wind. "Just thinking," she replied, the words tasting foreign on her lips. Lucy tilted her head, concern etching her brow. "You have that look again, Clara. What's on your mind?" Clara looked past Lucy, toward the treetops swaying gently in the breeze. The reality of what she was planning clawed at her insides. "It's nothing really, just life, you know. Come on," Lucy said with a playful nudge. "Life is too short for nothing. You have to let it out. If you don't talk, it's going to eat you up." Clara laughed lightly, but it felt hollow, like an echo in an empty room. "I promise I'm fine." Lucy was not convinced, and Clara could see her analyzing every inch of her face, scanning for the truth. "Are you sure this does not have anything to do with that lowlife Nathan?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain as she spat out Nathan's name. The mention of his name sent a shiver down Clara's spine. Nathan Hart, her once beloved partner, was the reason for her current turmoil. Their love had been intense and passionate, but the venom of betrayal had soured every sweet memory. Clara felt her fists clench at her sides, an involuntary reaction to the way Nathan had walked away from their dreams, from everything they had built together. "I don't want to talk about him," Clara finally said, her voice a harsh whisper. "You have to confront him, Clara. It's the only way to move on." Lucy was leaning closer now, her hazel eyes alight with a fire that was rare in their sleepy town. Confrontation? Clara had thought the same thing before, but this was different. She had a different plan, one that would ensure Nathan felt the full weight of his actions. "I don't think that will work anymore, Clara. It is not healthy to carry that much anger inside you." "Trust me, I know," Lucy urged, her tone shifting from playful to serious, but Clara felt her heart harden even further. "Trust me, Lucy, I have it all under control," Clara replied, even as her mind raced with images of the confrontation looming ahead. She imagined Nathan's smirk, the way he would chuckle dismissively at her feelings, at her pain. The thought made her stomach churn, but ignited a hunger for something more than mere confrontation. "He deserves to feel the consequences of what he's done." The silence hung thick between them like fog as Lucy studied her. "What do you mean?" Clara swallowed hard, fighting against the tide of memories washing over her. She remembered the way Nathan would flirt with other women, the way he would leave her alone on some nights, the way drama unfolded each time she dared to ask him where he had been. It had all led to that fateful night, the night her heart had shattered. "I just think people need to understand that actions have consequences, you know?" Clara spoke slowly, her voice gaining confidence. Lucy frowned, the gears clearly turning in her mind. "You sound serious, Clara. What are you planning?" Clara's heart raced, the plan meticulously formed in her mind. "I just want him to see what life is like without me, to understand the void he left." Images of the harsh reality she planned to reveal to Nathan flooded her thoughts. A world where Clara was no longer the faithful partner, but a figure stepping out of the shadows, empowered and unmistakable. It would be an awakening for him, one he would never forget. Lucy opened her mouth as if to respond, to offer words of caution, but Clara cut her off. "I promise it is all going to make sense soon. Just trust me. I just worry about you, Clara. That's my job." The genuine concern in her voice tugged at Clara's heartstrings, and for a moment doubt crept in, whispering accusations that she was crossing a line she could never return from. "Promise you will be careful. People can be unpredictable, especially Nathan." To calm Lucy's fears, Clara nodded, though her resolve remained steadfast. "I can handle myself, trust me." The darker thoughts swirling in her mind seemed to evaporate like morning mist, leaving only a flicker of determination. As she turned to walk down the winding path of polished leaves, she felt the energy around her change, almost electric. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced on the ground, a playful reminder of her growing intensity. Later that evening, Clara sat at her kitchen table, a solitary lamp casting a warm glow across the space. The walls of her modest home were painted in soft tones, contrasting with the storm brewing inside her. In front of her lay a collection of notebooks, each filled with her thoughts, sketches, and details about Nathan, about the ways to expose him for who he had become, not just to her but to everyone around him. "How did I get here?" she muttered to herself, the words barely escaping her lips before they slipped into her own conscience. Moments of clarity washed over her as she remembered a time when love had felt so vibrant and alive. But betrayal had wrapped her heart in a vice grip, squeezing until all warmth was drained away. Picking up a pen, Clara started to jot down ideas. "This is for you, Nathan," she murmured, her voice barely audible. The sound echoed in the stillness of her home, her pulse quickening with each word she wrote. She poured her heart into the pages, words splashing on the smooth paper like blood on a canvas, revealing the reality he needed to face. At last, Clara paused and leaned back in her chair, wiping the sweat from her brow that clung to her in the warm kitchen. It was time to put her plan into action. I have to gather the pieces, Clara whispered to herself, determination firing within her. The air thickened as she considered her options, her mind spinning with details about the steps to take to make Nathan stand accountable for everything he had done. Clara could almost taste her victory, the sweet, icy flavor of justice slowly creeping closer. It's only fair, she said, half convinced, her breath coming out in short bursts as excitement bubbled under her skin. The next days blurred together. Clara plotted and observed, taking notes on Nathan's interactions with friends and new acquaintances. She turned from the woman's scorn to an unseen force in Greenwood Valley, quietly slipping into cafes and bars, collecting conversations and moments. Each piece she gathered fed her need for retribution like kindling to a fire, igniting her resolve into a blaze. Hey, Clara, it was Jack, her neighbor, tall and athletic, who often jogged through their street. He had a friendly smile that could rival the sun's brightness, and Clara felt a fleeting moment of peace when she encountered him. You seem different these days. Everything all right? Clara flashed a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a rehearsed expression she had perfected. Yeah, just busy with work and stuff, Jack raised an eyebrow. You know, you can always talk to me. We all have our struggles. Surprisingly, she felt a wave of sympathy for Jack's concerns, though she couldn't allow herself to falter. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it, really, Emma, she redirected, hoping to shift the attention away from herself. How is she doing? She's doing well, actually. We are thinking of moving in together soon, he said, his face lighting up with that goofy grin. Wow, that must be exciting. Clara clapped her hands at the thought, her own world of turmoil contrasting sharply with Jack's happiness. Hope it goes well for you both. Are you sure you are okay, Clara? You sound a bit off, Jack offered, peering closely at her as if analyzing her every word. I promise I am good, she insisted, her words sharper than intended, just trying to figure some things out. He paused, and Clara could see the gears turning in his mind, recomposing his thoughts before he pressed on. Just remember, having someone to lean on can help. I am just next door if you need anything. Clara smiled appreciatively, feeling a hint of warmth again. I will keep that in mind. But as Jack walked away, she couldn't shake the unease settling deeper. The shadows of her plan were threatening to consume her as she danced on the razor's edge. Each night Clara returned to her plans, a whirlwind of caffeine-fueled ideas bursting forth. Page after page filled with her thoughts about what she would say to Nathan, how she would make him feel, what she needed to expose about him to set the stage for her revenge. She started connecting the dots between his indiscretions and how they affected others, dreaming up scenarios where his castle of lies would crumble brick by brick. With every hour, she felt more empowered, each idea strengthening her resolve. But uncertainty still lingered, lurking just behind her confidence, trying to whisper that the route she was taking could lead to chaos and pain, not just for Nathan, but for herself as well. This is what he deserves, she reminded herself as her pen scratched and danced furiously across the pages. Then an unexpected thought nudged her. Between the infuriating memories, could there be a chance for healing? A chance for her to escape the comfortable cocoon of bitterness and hatred she had spun around herself. No, Clara insisted aloud, trivializing the spark of doubt before shutting it down. The vision of Nathan's smug grin haunted her thoughts, and she pushed the idea aside. He does not deserve forgiveness, not yet. A flicker of resolve turned into a relentless blaze as she continued to sketch her revenge, each word an affirmation that fueled her anticipation. Plans materialized as Clara envisioned the moment, a carefully orchestrated meeting where Nathan would finally see her, not as the victim, but as the force he had underestimated. As night closed in, Clara felt a determination ripple through her entire being. The weight of her plan was exhilarating, and she drove herself deeper into the dark fantasies of her revenge as if it were a drug. With each passing day, she became the architect of her own justice, constructing a reality where she was not the one crushed by betrayal, but the one who would become the force that crushed the betrayer. It was time to ignite the spark, to set her plan into motion, ready to face the man who had darkened her existence. Just a little longer, she murmured to herself, staring out the window into the night sky filled with stars. You won't see it coming, Nathan, and I will be ready. I stood at the edge of Greenwood Valley, where the dying sunlight painted the sky in strokes of deep purple and fiery orange. The remnants of the day clung to the horizon as if the sun itself refused to let go, mirroring my own reluctance to face what was coming. I could feel the weight of what I had planned pressing against me, a storm gathering in the distance. I took a deep breath, my lungs filling with the crisp autumn air, and let out a shaky exhale. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, where everything would come crashing down. My heart raced, pounding like a drum in my chest as I replayed the last steps of my revenge in my mind. It had taken me months to get to this point, and now I could almost taste victory. Clara, you've got this, I whispered to myself, the words a fragile shield against the trepidation clawing at my insides. I reached for my phone and checked the time. 5 to 7, he would be at the old diner soon. The thought sent a rush of adrenaline surging through me. It was the same diner where I had first seen him, where he had charmed the town with that devil-may-care smile. I had felt something that day, excitement in his presence, a spark that had drawn me in despite all the warnings. My fingers trembled slightly as I scrolled through my contacts to his name, Nathan Wells, my betrayer. I remembered the way he had looked at me then, with genuine warmth before everything unraveled. Just a naive girl, Clara, his voice echoed in my mind, mocking and hollow. The taunt of it still stung, a reminder that I had once been blind to the truth. I shoved my phone into my pocket and adjusted the collar of my jacket. It was a good disguise, something dark and unremarkable, the perfect cover for a night like this. I had to remind myself that I was no longer the same woman who had fallen for him. I was a force to be reckoned with now, and nothing would stop me from reclaiming my power. You need to show him that crime doesn't pay, I murmured, my own resolve surprising me. As I made my way down the familiar streets of Greenwood Valley, I could feel the nostalgia enveloping me like an old, worn blanket, but the comfort it provided was fleeting. Memories of laughter echoed in the alleyways, mingling with the bitterness of betrayal, sharp as shattered glass. I could picture Nathan with his carefree laugh, the way his eyes had sparkled like gems. It was hard to believe that the same man had stolen my trust and shattered my heart. Walking past the small shops lining Main Street, I banished the pleasant memories with every determined step. I had a mission, and nostalgia had no place in my plans. The diner loomed into view, its neon lights flickering, illuminating the small parking lot. I lingered outside for a moment, watching as the thin mist of fog started to creep through the air like fingers grasping for something just out of reach. I recalled the nightly news report, the talk of Nathan switching loyalties and selling everyone out for his gain. You think you can walk away without consequences, Nathan? I whispered under my breath, a surge of anger igniting within me. The door swung open and I caught a glimpse of him inside, laughing with his friends. With that sight came a flood of memories, funny moments, late-night talks. The laughter felt like an acid burn in my chest. Focus, Clara, I whispered fiercely, steeling myself. I pushed the door open, the bell jangling overhead as I stepped into a world that felt both foreign and all too familiar. The diner was filled with the scent of greasy fries and the sound of clinking silverware. My heart raced as I walked past booths with people who barely took notice of me. I was there for a different purpose now, one that transcended the mundane chatter of everyday life. My eyes locked onto Nathan. He was ordering at the counter, his back to me. I felt a surge of rage building inside. It was intoxicating. I slid silently into a booth near the window, making sure I was positioned just right where he couldn't see me yet. I pretended to look at the menu, my mind racing with the enormity of what I was about to do. I couldn't let the uncertainty slip in. You are strong. You can do this, I breathed, my conviction hardening with each thought. A few minutes passed. Nathan took his time with the waitress, flirting unconsciously, his laughter ringing out like a siren call. My hands clenched the edges of the table, making my knuckles turn white. Soon after, he turned around, his gaze drifting through the diner until it landed on me. His face transformed from casual merriment to surprise. Clara, he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. I could see the flicker of confusion in his eyes, quickly masked by a practiced smile. What are you doing here? I breathed deeply, steadying myself before I answered. I just thought I would drop by. I heard you were back in town. My words came out sharper than I intended, probing for the truth hidden behind his charm. I watched as he shifted uncomfortably, his facade faltering for just a moment. Yeah, I just got in yesterday, he replied, his demeanor suddenly careful. I wasn't sure if you want to see me. The words were almost innocent, yet they felt like daggers aimed straight at my heart. Well, I mean, we haven't spoken in a while, I said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I could feel the tension in the air thickening, and I steeled myself for the confrontation I had been so desperately waiting for. I suppose I've been busy, I added, raising an eyebrow deliberately. Busy with what, work or something else? He pushed, the glimmer of genuine curiosity flashing across his face. As he leaned slightly forward, I felt the heat of his body, the warmth that had once felt like home now sending shivers of anticipation and dread. Work, I said sharply, my voice steady as the words hung between us, thick as fog, eerie and foreboding. I could feel his eyes studying me, searching for the old Clara, the one who had been endlessly forgiving, the one who had believed his lies. You seem different, he said, the comment directed at the colder edges of my demeanor. I crossed my arms, tilting my head slightly in challenge, determined to show him just how different I was now. Maybe I am, I replied calmly, drawing him in as I felt the angles of the truth cutting deeper. Maybe I finally figured out who you really are. His playful expression faltered, giving way to a tense smile. Come on, Clara, you know all that stuff was just business, right? Nothing personal. Nothing personal, I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Funny how you talked about loyalty and family and then betrayed everyone in town to save your own skin. Anger bubbled to the surface, firing up my resolve. I could see the color leaving his face, the mask he wore cracked just a bit. I didn't have a choice, he defended, but the hint of desperation leaked through. You don't get it if I hadn't done what I did. I could almost smell the sweat forming at his brow as the tension escalated. I get it perfectly well, I interrupted, my voice trembling only slightly with barely contained wrath. You sold out everything and everyone. You think you can waltz back into town like a hero? No one was on your side when this happened. I watched as his gaze flickered towards the exit, searching for an escape, but knowing he could not run. You don't want this, Clara, he said, his voice low, almost pleading. You don't want to ruin both of our lives over something that happened a long time ago. My heart raced at the realization that this conversation was circling a precipice. You made that choice when you stabbed me in the back, I replied, my tone icy and unwavering. You thought I would just forget and let you imply all this danger would fade. I leaned forward, my heart pounding, and watched as a myriad of emotions played across his face: regret, shame, anger, desperation. It was astonishing to see someone who once exuded so much confidence reduced to this shaky version of himself. This was what I needed, his vulnerability laid bare. Clara, I'm sorry, he stammered at last, the words almost meaningless to me. It was a mistake. I thought I could fix it. Fix it, I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the diner, startling a few other patrons. You think apologies can fix betrayal? Please, he implored, his voice rough with emotion. I could almost see the wheels turning in his mind. It doesn't have to go this way. There it was, the hint of desperation in his voice. I crossed my arms defiantly. What other way is there? You expect me to let it slide, just as you slid into your new life while I was left picking up the pieces? No, Nathan, this is the culmination of everything you set in motion. The corner of my mouth twitched with mirthless amusement as I awaited his response, curious to see how he would try to wriggle out of this one. For a moment, Nathan faltered, caught off guard by my words laced with fury, trembling on the edge of a choice I had put before him. There are consequences for what I did, and I'm willing to face them, he murmured. You could be part of my redemption. I tilted my head, studying him carefully, my heart beating wildly as I questioned whether it was real sincerity or a last-ditch attempt to hold on to power. Redemption, by lying some more? I spat, my stomach twisting at the mere thought. You should have thought about redemption before you chose to betray your friends. The diner buzzed around us, oblivious to our charged conversation. The waitress passed by, oblivious to the unresolved tension crackling like static in the air. Just let me explain, he pressed, clinging to the last threads of his composure. I caught that flicker of desperation in his gaze, and it made me angrier still. Explain what? How chipping away at trust was better than being honest. I leaned closer, daring him to meet my unwavering gaze. You don't want to hear this, but all I hear are regrets now that your world is crumbling around you. It won't work, Nathan. You can't charm your way back. No, you don't get it, he said, his voice rising slightly, revealing that flicker of panic. You think this is about me. It is about trying to survive a mess that spiraled out of control. The passion in his voice stirred something in me, but I quickly drowned it out. Don't twist your failure into a heroic narrative. You don't get a medal for cowardice. The glimmer of anger in his eyes made me feel alive, the adrenaline coursing through my body with each spoken word. There was something electric in our confrontation, like two clashing storms about to collide. I had no choice. It was either I make those choices or end up dead. He shot back defensively, the utter frustration spilling over. You think I wanted this? I was trying to survive. And what about the people you brought down with you? I shouted, a cold wave of desperation washing over me. Would he ever truly understand the chaos he had created? The friends, the trust, all shattered into irreparable pieces. You think I didn't care? He questioned, his voice lowering, revealing a subtle crack in the armor of arrogance. I did what I thought was right for the sake of my own life, but hey, maybe you'll finally see the truth behind it all. I leaned back, sipping water absent-mindedly, my gaze never wavering from his, determined to unravel the layers of feigned sincerity. The truth, I repeated, searching for genuine steam behind his words. You believe there's a truth to your treachery. You think all of this could ever lead to something pure. I felt an undercurrent of regret coursing through him, a small part of me wanting to believe he was genuinely caught in a web of his own making. But that was not enough for me to soften. You need to face what you have done, I declared flatly, sealing my resolve. This is your reckoning. Nathan opened his mouth to respond, his mind struggling with how to rationalize the catastrophe he had authored. Clara, please, no, I interrupted, my voice rising once more, slicing through the thickness of the air. The feeling of empowerment pushed back the tide of lingering feelings I had allowed to linger for too long. No more words, Nathan, you had your chance. The fire in my chest ignited even brighter, exhilaration coursing through my veins as I prepared for the final blow. I had driven him to this point to witness the trembling acknowledgement of his own failures, and I could feel the energy shift, prickling the air around us. I watched as Nathan's expression shifted, a realization dawning upon him that he was indeed cornered. So what now? He mumbled, his bravado seeming to evaporate. What do you want from me? I leaned closer, my voice dropping low, almost conspiratorial as I locked eyes with him, the intensity igniting the moment. I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything, to understand the weight of your decisions. I want you to walk away knowing that betrayal has consequences, Nathan. The silence that followed hung thick, the invisible tension like a taut wire about to snap. I could almost taste the victory on my lips, a sweet promise of closure wrapping around me. Nathan's shoulders slumped, defeat shimmering in his eyes. You can't do this, Clara, he said softly, utterly drained. What you think is revenge won't solve anything. His voice resonated with an unexpected vulnerability that grazed against my hardened emotions. You're wrong, Nathan, I countered. I could feel a rush of power like wildfire within my soul, promising to consume the residual sadness that lived in me. I could destroy your life just as you did mine. My words echoed in the small space, both of us catching our breath at the implication. You're not that brutal, he said, a hint of weak defiance in his voice. Or are you? The storm in me raged louder as I glanced outside, the gathering clouds promising rain, mirroring the storm of redemption sinking deeply into the corners of my heart. I took a breath as the energy around us shifted, a storm already building within me that had little to do with the heat of our confrontation. My thoughts danced around the concept of revenge, of justice, and of fading ties that had once been so delicate. I have broken connections with you, Nathan. You don't get to keep parts of me because you're drowning, I said firmly, pushing all uncertainty to the back of my mind. You are drowning in your own mess. As I turned toward the door, my decision solidified in that fleeting moment. I felt liberated, a torrent of emotions pouring down on me like the rain that had finally broken through the clouds above. His voice called out to me, tinged with desperation and hinting at the depth of his regret. Clara, please don't just walk away. I turned one last time to face him, and for a split second I saw the raw human emotion playing out in his eyes. Do you think I want to walk away? I challenged, anguish lacing my words. This was always about understanding what justice feels like. With that, I pushed open the door, feeling the cool air hit my face as I left him behind. Injustice is on my side, I whispered to myself as I stepped out into the storm, letting the rain wash away the remnants of his betrayal, a cleansing that resonated with every drop pounding down. I knew this was just one step in my journey, but the unfurling clouds screamed of redemption, of survival, and of a strength I had scarcely acknowledged before. The storm was just beginning to break.